Hi, it's Mark from Top Local, producer of the Pawlik Automotive podcast and video series, and we're talking cars with Bernie Pawlik, Pawlik Automotive in Vancouver, Vancouver's best auto service experience and 22-time winners of Best Auto Repair in Vancouver. And today's victim is a car I know a little bit about, a 2018 Honda Clarity. What was going on with this vehicle, Bernie?
Yes. So what was going on with this vehicle? This vehicle was in for its first maintenance service, and I know you know a lot about this. So full disclosure to everyone, this is your car, Mark. We are featuring it, and I know you know that. But it's awesome to thank you for the opportunity to do the first maintenance service on this vehicle. A lot of people. We had a lot of clients who, been coming into us for years, and they buy a new vehicle, and for some reason they go to the dealer thinking they have to get service done there. Now, I know if the dealer throws in free service, free maintenance, of course, go there. I mean, it'd be stupid not to. But for those who don't get free service, please come back to us because we do a really good job, and it keeps your warranty fully intact because we use all the proper fluids and filters and everything that will keep your vehicle warranty intact. So. And we like working on new cars. There's not a lot that needs to be done, but they're all nice and clean, and we'll look at a nice picture show of your car in a few minutes. So basically, this vehicle is due for its first service, as you mentioned. I believe about 10,000 kilometers are on the vehicle, and pretty simple service. I mean, basically, an oil change is essentially what it is, and a visual inspection of the vehicle.
So you just covered the second question. So it's a hybrid. Are there any additional service requirements?
There are none. I mean, the nice thing about the hybrid system is it just kind of works. It just works in the background. I mean, it's certainly more in the foreground, but it just works. It's reliable. If anything does go wrong, warning lights will come on, and you'll know that there's a malfunction of some sort that needs to be addressed. But other than that, it just basically takes care of itself. And, of course, with this car being almost new, it does have a warranty on it. So for the first while, there's nothing you need to worry about.
It's actually a plug-in hybrid, which means that it gets a drink on a fairly regular basis at home.
Yes. So question, how often do you actually run this on the internal combustion engine? Because that's really when we do the maintenance service, that's pretty much all that gets serviced is the internal combustion engine. As
little as possible, because when we're looking at the difference between the two, it's got a very small fuel tank, 5.5 gallons, 27 liters roughly, which is really small. Kind of takes me back to my poor student days of Austin Mini, 5-gallon tank, and which would take me from Kamloops to Vancouver, actually. Anyways, this car with that small tank, honest truth, we've had it for in a couple of months, it'll be a year. We filled it up 6 times with fuel. So not a bloody lot is the gas engine, as little as possible, because it's just so much cheaper at 11 cents a kilowatt hour to put electricity into the battery. It's way cheaper.
Yeah, and I imagine the car's nice to drive on plug-in mode anyways. It's a lot quieter. You don't have the vibration and the noise of the engine as well.
We'll get into that for sure, because that's an interesting part of this vehicle.
Yeah. So really, even though the vehicle has 10,000 kilometers, the internal combustion engine may have 1,000 or 2,000 kilometers of actual usage. And I will say that, when one of my technicians did the service, but I did look at the oil and it does look discolored. I mean, not certainly hideous, but, it's a good time to change it because, we've talked about different maintenance schedules in a previous podcast, a hybrid is kind of in the severe use category because the engine's, it'll start up cold. It often doesn't run for a long period of time. It'll switch on, switch off in hybrid mode. So, while it's running, it is actually under a pretty severe usage. So it's good to change it at the prescribed interval, even though it seems like it may not have been run all that long.
So Honda's made a lot of different hybrid vehicles over the past at least 20 years, maybe longer. What's unique about this Clarity hybrid in what you've seen?
What I see with the Clarity is, okay, first of all, it's a plug-in. That's a bit different. A lot of Hondas were not plug-ins, until recently. So I think that's the biggest differentiating factor of the Clarity hybrid is the plug-in feature. But I just see it as kind of like Honda's evolution of hybrids. It's just the technology keeps improving over the years and they keep adding to that technology. And what's interesting about this car is it's kind of, not an insult, but it has that same ugly rear fender cover as the Honda Insight. It's certainly a much nicer car, but it has that. Actually, why don't we just show some pictures right now?
The fender skirts, Bernie.
The fender skirt, yes, thank you. This is your beautiful car, just freshly washed after the service. Yeah, it's got that, sort of half fender skirt. Well, the inside had a full fender skirt on it. But what's actually kind of neat about the Honda Insight is that whole car body is actually aluminum, which is pretty cool. Like that's 20-year-old technology, and it was like way ahead of its time. Unfortunately, the styling is just so ugly. I don't know why anyone ever bought one, but they were, they're a pretty cool car for what they did. So I just kind of see this as an evolution in that technology. Let's just look at some other pictures because, speaking of aluminum, there's a lot underneath the vehicle that's aluminum. This is a look at the rear suspension, and this whole rear subframe is all aluminum. And it's got this interesting rear suspension arm. The picture doesn't really portray it quite as well as when you look underneath. You go, what the heck is this arm that sticks way out? And it has a big steel frame, and my technician Edward and I were kind of looking underneath. Why do they have this thing? And I think it's actually to prevent, if you back up, from whacking this arm and bending it or breaking it. So it's a little interesting additional piece of metal there, but really nicely formed and nicely built. Obviously, weight reduction, is in mind there. Have another look. Again, another look at the rear suspension. Here's the muffler. Beautiful welded stainless steel muffler. I mean, kind of neat technology. I always love the technology of cars as they come out. There's a look at the front suspension. Just this looks like a standard front wheel drive, but again, a lot of aluminum pieces here, the control arms, the tie rod ends, really nicely fabricated. Underside of the engine, so this is the transmission and the electric drive unit in this area here, and then you've got your internal combustion engine here. Oil filter, there's the air conditioning compressor, which is electric. It's a high voltage unit, which is common in all modern hybrids and electric vehicles. Again, lots of aluminum. And where are we going next? The front exhaust system, catalytic converter, orange cables, all orange cables. Those are all high voltage electrical system cables. And then we'll get back to the under hood. So here we have the internal combustion engine, air intake manifold, radiator. This is the inverter for the electric drive motors. And underneath here would be the transmission and the electric drive motors, ABS brake module, and of course, lots of orange cables. And then Honda's cool little nifty Earth Dreams logo. I don't know whoever thought of that, but I just laugh every time I look under the hood, especially when it's a straight internal combustion engine. I just go, I don't know what that means. It's just weird corporate jargon. But,
so what's the size of this combustion engine? I think it's 1.4 liters.
Yes, it is. So not huge, but for you personally, what's the performance of this vehicle like?
Let me ask you another question first.
Sure.
So how many electric motors? It's 2 or 3, I think.
I should have done my research a little more thoroughly, but generally it's 2.
And there's a traction motor and a regenerative braking.
This motor, usually it's MG1 and MG2, and one of those motors drives the vehicle. The other one will start the internal combustion engine. It'll do the regenerative braking. And then a lot of times 2 of them will work together. So on this system, I actually haven't done my research as much as I could have, but they all work together and usually serve different functions. But one of the motors is usually substantially larger. That's the one that drives the vehicle.
Yeah. So this vehicle is similar in a way to the way other electric vehicles, where they have the skateboard platform where the batteries are along the bottom. The battery runs from the firewall in the engine compartment to basically where the engine cabin ends, and then the batteries are stacked. The batteries are running underneath the floorboards of the car. Basically, the inside is quite roomy for this size of car. You don't have the drive shaft tunnel. And so that's a really positive thing. It's a 17.7 kilowatt hour battery, which is, for how much space that battery is taking, it doesn't compute somehow in my mind. It's really small for that much space. Yeah. So they use some kind of weird technology that's not exactly the best out there by any means. I mean, in a similar kind of space, a Tesla will have 75 kilowatt hours.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. It's a really amazing difference. It makes you wonder what's exactly in there in terms.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, they obviously know how to cram a lot of stuff in there. You can see from the engine compartment, it's got, 2 electric motors and a combustion motor. Operation, you asked about performance. You get different driving modes. So you just click a button and you got a sport mode. And the vehicle, if you start from the stop, it catches your attention. It's pretty quick. It's 0 to 60 in 7 seconds.
That is quick.
Which, in the world of EVs, it's not that fast, but in the, regular world, this is just a, passenger car.
Yeah.
Your regular Honda Accord, basically, maybe finished a little nicer inside. got a nice, but pretty common these days, smaller size of LED unit, which is, my experience with it is it's not that user friendly to use, but it's okay. I've driven Teslas. I know how they work, and it doesn't compare, in all honesty. The fit and finish of the vehicles, it's Honda. It's like a lower model Acura in terms of how I felt it was inside. It's very nice. It's comfortable, super comfortable, actually. I would say it's one of the most comfortable cars I've ever had. What don't we like about it? Performance-wise, it's wonderful when you're driving on the electric, like you were talking about earlier. It's very quiet. It's very powerful. When you want power, it's instantly there. All the wonderful things about electric. Anyone who says electrics don't have power is wrong, period.
They've just never driven one.
It'll snap your head faster than any other vehicle you've ever had.
Yeah.
But when you suck too much power too fast out of that small little battery, the other motor will kick in. It's got a constant variable transmission, which I'm sure they probably had to use in this vehicle, which means that suddenly you got a whole bunch of noise and clatter happening that you didn't expect. Or if the battery's running low, the motor will automatically kick on. You don't have any choice about it. And it starts to charge. Basically, the gas engine is charging the battery, so you don't run out of battery before you get home.
Yeah.
You don't notice it at highway speeds. You can't hear it because of the road noise and wind noise. But in town, it's jarring that suddenly that motor comes on. Or if you really stomp on it, it will kick in and both motors will run. That's where you get the full amount of torque. I think it's 270 foot-pounds of torque, which again, for a little 1.5 liter equivalent vehicle is a lot. It's like it's got a V6 in performance. We wish that it had way more range, in all honesty. And if we had it to do over, we probably would have jumped and gone to a Tesla, to be honest with you. Otherwise, no, the car's been trouble-free. It's easy to use. I love the fact that we've got experience now with having a pseudo EV where you can just plug it in each night and you get all the juice and all the range you want in the morning. It's pretty amazing. It's sobering to see how much in cold weather that range drops, because it drops a fair amount. 17.5 or 0.7 kilowatts gives us generally now we're starting to warm up, we'll get about 80, 85 kilometers. So for most of the driving that we do, even, on longer trips, that's going to cover most of what we need.
Covers a good distance.
And we've got the gas tank there so that if we want to drive to Seattle and back, which is, a fair good distance, the vehicle, we just throw some fuel in it and keep going. It's got 700 kilometers of range.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty awesome. It's interesting. One thing you mentioned earlier that caught my attention, you talk about how as the battery gets low, it'll start charging the battery. And it's what amazes me about, the technology of these cars, and all hybrids, even going way back to the Honda Insight. Well, that's actually such a simple hybrid. It's a little different, but these modern hybrids, the computer management of things, is amazing. Things like the engine will just start because the battery's low, maybe not because it has to, but it can't be let lower than a certain level of charge, for maintenance. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in the background on a hybrid that, even when you hit the brakes, sometimes if it's an emergency stop, it won't even do regenerative braking. It'll just go straight into full ABS braking. So there's so many items that are just managed in the background on these cars, and it's reliable. That's the neat thing about it. With all these computers, I've been in the trade for so long. I was worried, oh my God, it's so complicated. And it's like, it seems like where it really counts, it's reliable.
Yeah. So the regenerative braking is one other thing I'd like to talk about. That is once you get used to it, it becomes very interesting to play with. Now with the clarity, you've got options. So when you're in certain modes, the regenerative braking's on, and you have a paddle shifter where you can set how much you want. So if you're in sport mode, you can set it at, say, full, so it's got full regenerative, where as soon as you take your foot off the gas, off the accelerator, the car you feel it's just like somebody put a big drag chute out the back.
Wow.
It's pulling you back, pulling you down, slowing your speed. Most of the time you're in EV mode, trying to conserve as much battery as possible. And it's not set like that, which, to be honest with you, is one of my pet peeve. I'm always clicking on the thing, because then you can set it manually by how much regen you want every time you come to a stop. And I'm always putting it up to 4, up to the max, because I want to gain as much battery back as I possibly. It's not much, but it helps. It extends it a few more kilometers.
Absolutely.
And that's sort of a pet peeve. It's kind of a weird way. I don't understand why they did that, you can't just set it once and leave it. That's how it is in other EVs. You go into the control, wherever the controls are, and set how much regen you want, and there you go. That's what you get. So that leads to the motor kicking in a little bit more often. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that it's a little disconcerting sometimes when I pull into the garage. This has happened once where, I've been driving a little bit harder and the battery's been sucked drier a little bit and the car is running, and you turn the car off and the engine keeps running. Because it's charging the battery. It says the battery's too low, we're going to charge the battery. So you shut the car off, but the engine's still running.
Interesting.
And then you flip the lid open and you plug in the car and the engine shuts off because now it's getting power from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So it's very, very clever how they've set that part of things up to do that. But I think ultimately Clarity was made in 3 different forms in California. There was a EV version, a hydrogen version, and the hybrid version. All that's remaining for 2020 is the hybrid, like mine. Very rare car. Why didn't we buy an electric car? There weren't any.
Yeah. There was a run on them in BC for a while there when gas prices went high and government put in some incentives. And I know that's when you bought yours. And it's hard to find.
This was the last one in British Columbia, actually, in the whole province. It's a nice car.
It is a nice car for sure. I mean, this has kind of gone from a maintenance service to a review of the 2018 Honda Clarity, but I'd say it's an awesome car. And then based on the track record of Honda hybrid reliability, I'd say it's a good car to buy.
There you go. So if you're looking for service for your Hondas in Vancouver, the guys to see are Pawlik Automotive. We love all cars. We will be honest about them as well. You can reach them at 604-327-7112 to book your appointment, or check out the website, pawlikautomotive.com. Hundreds of articles, videos, discussions on there about all kinds of makes and models of vehicles, all kinds of repairs. Pawlik Auto Repair is the YouTube channel. Thanks so much for listening and watching the podcast. We really appreciate it. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Again, we would really appreciate that. And thank you, Bernie.
Thank you, Mark. And thanks for watching.